Hi guys, so a while ago on my Instagram, I asked the question on my stories of what people had wished they had done before they turned 30 in terms of their finances. So any sort of regrets or anything that, you know, they may have done but not enough of, etc. And what I wanted to do was take all of those responses and collate them together and do a little bit of a video just sort of telling you the financial steps that you should really take before you hit 30. Now for me, 30 is looming next year, and I only really got my stuff together when I was about 27, so it felt very late in the day, and if you can sort of sort your finances out a lot sooner, then you will thank me and yourself. Now, I was planning to put these together with my own sort of regrets, but pretty much the sort of stuff that came up, all of it I would have covered too. And the majority of things that came up were repeatedly coming up and people were saying the same things. So if you are in your 20s, especially in your early 20s, but if you are in your 20s, then just know that this came from a lot of people, and you may not think like this stuff matters now, but trust me and the many other people who have been there, done that, and can tell you categorically that if you don't do these things, you will regret it when you are in your late 20s or early 30s. I'm going to start with the most basic one, and the one that is super easy to do because you can just use free resources if you want to, or you can buy some books, and that is learn basic financial literacy. So this isn't something that is taught in schools, as we all know, and I'm not really talking about things like maths, I'm talking about actual financial literacy. So understand things like how credit cards work and, you know, budgeting and investing, basics of investing, all of that kind of basic financial knowledge, and you will want to do the rest of these steps by yourself. Honestly, the more you learn about how things work, the more you want to just be more sensible, I suppose, with your money. What I will do is in the description below, I will just link a page on my blog that will just give you sort of starting points, you know, YouTube channels to look at, videos to look at, and potentially, if you want to spend a little bit of money, some books to look into buying. The more you learn, the better you will feel, and this actually came up a few times from people, so it is really, really important to educate yourself. The way I'm going to structure the remainder of these points is essentially by the amount of votes, if you want to call them that they had. So the most popular pieces of advice first to the least popular. Of course, it doesn't mean that the least popular ones are less important, but I want to start with the ones that people regret the most first. So the first one I don't think will be a surprise to anyone, but it is to save a percentage of your money and or save more money. So the majority of people who I speak to, and that's myself included, regrets not saving more money. So you could have been someone like me who didn't really save at all, or you could have been someone who saved maybe only 10% of their income. So the more you can push it, the more you're going to thank yourself, because I have not met anyone who doesn't regret not saving more money. And there were a few people who said this in the responses, but a lot of people regret spending a lot of money on things that they don't remember. So nights out and takeaways and alcohol. And that's not to say, you know, don't live your life in your 20s, because you totally should. Go on nights out, buy overpriced drinks, but just bear in mind how much you're actually spending on it. Don't overdo it, and, you know, try to work with a budget in mind and have that budget be saving first and then spending what's left over. So set yourself a target, you know, maybe 20% of your income or something, and just automate that, put that away. That's something that came up a lot too, is automating your savings, and then just work with the rest. That sort of leads me on to the next point, and that is living below your means. So again, this was a really, really popular one, and I think a lot of people don't really consider this. So they think, oh, credit cards and loans and student loans, and, you know, the best thing you can do is live on less than you make. It might be tempting to keep up with friends at uni and keep up with people you work with. You know, if you start a new job, I remember when I first started and all I could think about was keeping up with nights out with, say, work people. And I don't mean clubbing, I mean like going to the pub and wanting to, you know, do the rounds of drinks and keeping up with the amount of times people were going out and then going out with my friends on top of it. It was hard work. You know, a lot of the people I was going out with were much more further along in their career, so they could afford those nights out. No one is going to judge you for saying no sometimes, and I think that's really important because I didn't learn to say no until really, really recently. I used to do things I didn't want to just because I wanted to make people happy or, you know, impress people that I worked with or anything like that, and you're just going to regret it later in life. So the next most popular thing that came up was saving an emergency fund. And again, if you already watch financial channels, this isn't a surprise. And of course, the amount that you save is going to be completely different for different people, but having a sort of emergency fund set up will help you so much, whether it's for changing jobs or, you know, things breaking down so that you don't have to take out loans and get yourself into that cycle of debt. I think people seriously underestimate the importance of having an emergency fund. The next thing is start investing, and there were different ways that this presented itself, but the majority of people talked about just putting money into a stocks and shares ISA, into index funds, and I totally support that. I think that if you are really young and you're not really able to dedicate the time or understand the ins and outs of investing into individual companies, then I think investing in a stocks and shares ISA into index funds like the S&P 500 is the single best thing you can do. The amount of people that regret not investing earlier on in their life is insane. And whilst you can have the sort of quick wins and high risk, high return and all that sort of thing, if you really put your mind to it and you're happy to take on the risk, even something like just putting a percentage of your money into the S&P 500 will most likely help you beat inflation and make your money work for you and save it aside for your future. Again, this leads quite nicely into the next thing, which is contribute to your pension. I'm guilty of this myself, and I spent the majority of my working life so far not contributing to my workplace pension, and I had my reasons, and this isn't really the video to get into it, but I do regret not really looking into it more, because I found out recently that I actually had the option with my employer to join a pension scheme where I didn't have to pay anything in, and my employer would make the minimum 8% contribution. So I worked out from when I started my career to when I opted into this that I've lost out essentially on about £20,000 of employer contributions without me putting in even a single pound. And that was purely as a result of me not really doing my due diligence initially and not finding out more. I sort of ignored the whole pension thing because I thought, oh, I'll worry about it later on when I'm in my late 20s and then start paying into a pension. Even if all you do is contribute the bare minimum, you will not regret it. Especially since, let's face it, if you are that young now, do you really think you're gonna get a state pension? I don't know. Tell me in the comments below, because I'm very cynical and I am convinced that I will never see my state pension. So I do think that looking into pension contributions is really, really important. And if you don't really understand it, just talk to someone in your company who is an expert. They will always have someone you can talk to, I think either in HR or like if they outsource their pensions, it could be someone outside, but just know your options. Don't do what I did. The next thing is also a really popular one, but it had different variations on it. And so the general vibe is don't get into debt, which, you know, you should know if you watch financial channels. But the varying degrees of this were things like don't get into debt, or pay off your debts if you have them already, or don't just make minimum payments on your debts because then you'll just be chasing them forever and things like that. So essentially, try to be savvy. Don't get into debt in the first place, but if you do, or you have already and you regret it, don't just make the minimum payments. Really try to throw everything you have at your debt. Remember, for me, I managed to pay off like an insane amount of debt in a short time frame because I really started focusing on paying that down, getting extra jobs just to pay it off. And yeah, it was hard work, but being able to say that I paid off like £25,000 in less than a year as a result was amazing. And if you are in your early 20s, the reality probably is, and I know there will be exceptions, but the reality probably is that you have the time to spare to work extra jobs and do things that will help you pay any of those debts off. So try to think about it, because even when it comes to things like buying a house, which you may think is really far away, but I'm sure a lot of people want to, they will scrutinize your finances, your loans, what debts you have and things like that. So it's really important to just try to erase those. I love how nicely these flow, because the next thing is learn how to use credit cards the right way. So you should definitely know how to use credit cards, because they are one of the best ways to get free money. But the key is to know how to use them. So the way that many people like myself use credit cards is to use them for day-to-day spending and then paying them off in full within the month that they're due, and therefore racking up the points that give you money and building up your credit score as well. So never ever ever using a credit card to actually take a line of credit. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, the one that I use and that a lot of people I know use is the American Express card, and it is free for the first year and it gives you incredible bonus points. It's one of the best rewards credit cards that there are. So if you don't yet have one, I definitely recommend checking that out. I do have a link down below if you want to try it out. I'm not working with them or anything like that. It's just my own personal referral link. And that way I get a few extra points and you get a few extra points if you use it. But again, the whole point is just to learn how to use them correctly to your advantage, to get extra money, you know, money off flights or money off anything that, you know, your credit card provides you, building up that credit rating and not using it as actual credit. And the final piece of advice that people had was don't finance a car. Only buy second-hand cars or cars that you can afford. Never finance them. And this is something that I've done in the past as well, and I know people who have done it, and leasing a car is even worse. But essentially there is no point doing that, especially in your 20s. Don't do it. You know, you have no one to impress. You might think you do, but you really, really don't. People who genuinely are going to like you and care about you do not need you to have fancy, expensive cars on finance that you want to impress them with. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully this has been useful. And if you do have, you know, kids or other family members or someone who you think would benefit from this video, then make sure you share it with them. And yeah, have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.